You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Syracuse should be a strong offensive team on paper next season. You got Nathan George, Nate Kingz, Starling and Freeman are back. Should be a good offensive team. But Syracuse this offseason did not do enough to address the other end of the floor, which is preventing the other team from scoring, aka defense. So while the offense looks really good, the defense on paper does not. Yesterday on the podcast, I mentioned how the 2021-2022 Syracuse basketball team was the last Orange team that had 4 players who averaged at least 10 points per game. In fact, that team had 5 players that averaged 10 points per game. And overall, the 2021-2022 Syracuse basketball team averaged over 77 points per game, which was good for 4th in the ACC. So they were very good on offense. But they went under 500. How did they go under 500? A team that can score a ton of points, right? The reason why they went under 500 is because they couldn't get a stop. They let up over 75 points per game. They were second worst in the ACC in that regard. And the lesson here is that you can be great on offense. You can average 77 points per game, but it does not matter if you can't get stops on the other end of the floor, right? And so when I look at Syracuse basketball, they could have a top 5 offense and a bottom 5 defense in the ACC this upcoming season. And when you look at the roster, you have to ask yourself, or at least I'm asking myself, and I could also throw it over to you, right? So feel free to comment in the comment section below here. Who on the roster actually projects to be a strong defender? Not just like an average one or, just not terrible, right? Who actually is a good defender on this team for next season? Who is it? I'd love to know, because my answer is maybe 2 players, maybe. True freshman Sadiq White looks like he's going to be a stud defender right away. That's going to be nice. And then William Kyle. But we'll talk about William Kyle later on in this segment, how it's very confusing with a guy like him as far as his defense is concerned. Let's evaluate the roster now as far as defense. And we'll use Evan Miya, which is a free analytical tool online. And for those that maybe I'm speaking a little too fast, Evan, EVAN, Miya, MIYA. It's not a perfect analytical tool, but it does help provide more analysis than just your typical steals or your blocks per game, right? So the ratings that you are going to hear me throw out reflect the value that each player provides on defense. Essentially, the way to describe it, and I've described it before, but in case you are new to this podcast, first of all, welcome. If you are new to this podcast, really appreciate you checking this out, right? If there are 9 average Division I basketball players on the floor, and the 10th player is the player we are going to mention, say it's JJ Starling, right? Well, the rating tells you how much better or worse the team becomes on defense with that player on the floor per 100 possessions. And the higher number, the better. For the sake of argument, I think a 1.0 is a pretty good grade on defense. Let's just compare the starting lineup this year compared to last year, okay? Jaquan Carlos got a 0.08 defensive grade. That's not good at all. Nathan George, this upcoming season, who will be the starting point guard, has a 0.46 grade last year. So edges slightly to George, but 0.46 defensive grade last season isn't exactly good on defense. It is a slight improvement on Jaquan Carlos, but still not very good. Your shooting guard, it's still JJ Starling. He remains the same. Last season, he was a 0.11 defensive grade on Evan Miya, meaning that JJ Starling, if he was the 10th player on a team of, or with 9 average Division I players on the floor, the team with JJ Starling would be 0.1 points better on defense per 100 possessions. Then you got Chris Bell versus Nate Kingz. Chris Bell was an awful defender. He had a negative 0.37. So an average team with Chris Bell would be worse on defense with him on the floor. And then you got Nate Kingz, who was a 0.41 on Oregon State last season. So the edge is again to Nate Kingz, but 0.41 is not a good defender. Plus, Nate Kingz is coming here to be a small forward, not necessarily a shooting guard. So it might be a little bit tougher for him to defend. And then you got your power forward, Donnie Freeman remains. Last season, he got an Evan Miya defensive grade of 0.37. That's not good, again. And then your center is Eddie Lampkin versus William Kyle. And you would think that William Kyle, given that he was the 2024 Summit League Defensive Player of the Year, that he would be a rock star over on Evan Miya and have these very high grades. But actually, Eddie Lampkin has a higher grade than him. Eddie Lampkin, who is known as a terrible defender, got a 0.83 grade last season. William Kyle, I know he wasn't at South Dakota State. He was at UCLA, but he only got a 0.36 grade. It's just weird. I know. With William Kyle, it's very confusing because he does have a very high block rate. Last season, it was at 8.9%, but he just does not grade well in Evan Miya. In fact, the year that he won Defensive Player of the Year for the Summit League over at South Dakota State, he got a grade of negative 0.25, which was third worst on his team. So I guess we're going to find out this upcoming season who's right. Is it the nerds or is it the people? I guess we'll find out. I'm open to either, but that's why I mention it. The point being is that even if you look at this starting lineup, even if William Kyle is a really strong defender, Donnie Freeman is not a good defender. JJ Starling is not a good defender. Nate Kingz is not a good defender, and neither is Nathan George. So you don't really have a good defensive starting lineup. And then you look at the bench. We mentioned Sadiq White. He's probably going to be a pretty good defender right off the bat. That's going to be nice. Kiyan Anthony and the other freshmen like Luke Fennell and Aaron Womack, are they elite defenders? You think they're going to be good right off the bat on the defensive end? I'm not so sure. Tyler Betsey last season got a 0.47 defensive grade over at Cincinnati in his true freshman year. Again, not very good. Ibrahim Soare actually got a 0.91 defensive grade, so he was the closest to a 1.0. So maybe he can contribute a little bit on defense, right, when he's on the floor. And then finally, you got Bryce Zephyr, who, let's be honest, I mean, he's got terrible grades, but he's not going to play all that much anyway, so why bother? Overall, yeah, Syracuse upgraded its offense. It's a much better offensive team. They could very easily be a top 5 offense in the ACC. But when I look top to bottom, the defense, I don't think that this team did enough in the offseason